because then when you're an independent now.
Yeah.
So what does that say? That to me, it says that you think the Republican.
The conversation between Bill Maher and Joe Scarborough took a sharp turn, revealing deep divides in political perspectives and exposing the tensions that define today's media landscape. Maher, now identifying as an independent, has made it clear he views the Republican Party as beyond redemption. This stance, articulated during a heated exchange, suggests a profound disillusionment with the GOP's current trajectory. Scarborough, on the other hand, appeared caught off guard, retreating from the discussion as Maher pressed his points with unrelenting precision. The clash wasn't just a debate over policy or personalities, it was a window into the broader cultural and political rifts that continue to shape public discourse. Maher's decision to distance himself from the Republican Party stems from his belief that it is unsalvageable. He argues that if reform were possible, he would have stayed to fight for it. Instead, he sees a party too far gone, consumed by forces he can no longer align with. This perspective is significant as it reflects a growing sentiment among some former Republicans who feel the party has drifted from its traditional roots. For Maher, the GOP's current state, dominated by what he perceives as extreme elements, makes it impossible to envision a path to recovery. Scarborough, however, seemed unprepared to engage with this critique, opting instead to deflect or disengage, a move that only amplified Maher's point about the lack of substantive dialogue. The exchange grew particularly contentious when Scarborough addressed Donald Trump's rhetoric, claiming Trump intended to use the military and National Guard to arrest political opponents. Scarborough cited Trump's refusal to back down from these statements, pointing to comments about figures like Nancy Pelosi, her husband, Adam Schiff, and even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. According to Scarborough, Trump labeled these individuals as evil and suggested drastic actions, including executing disloyal military leaders and praising authoritarian-style generals. These claims, presented with alarm, were meant to paint Trump as a dangerous figure whose words threaten democratic norms. Maher, however, was quick to challenge Scarborough's framing, accusing him of selective storytelling. He argued that Scarborough omitted critical context, twisting Trump's words to fit a narrative of fear-mongering. Maher didn't deny Trump's provocative rhetoric but insisted that the left, including outlets like MSNBC, often amplifies these statements while ignoring their own missteps. He pointed to what he sees as a pattern of misinformation from liberal media, examples like the Russian collusion narrative, the Hunter Biden laptop story, and the fine people hoax surrounding Trump's Charlottesville comments. For Maher, this selective outrage is not just hypocritical, but a deliberate strategy to maintain a villainous image of Trump while shielding the left from scrutiny. The debate over misinformation became a central theme of the exchange. Maher contended that both sides engage in distorting facts, but the left's tactics are particularly insidious because they cloak themselves in moral superiority. He highlighted instances where platforms like MSNBC have pushed narratives that later unraveled under scrutiny, yet faced little accountability. Scarborough, representing the liberal media establishment, struggled to counter this charge, perhaps because doing so would require acknowledging uncomfortable truths about his own network's practices. Maher's broader point was that the left's obsession with Trump's flaws blinds them to their own, creating a cycle of projection where they accuse their opponents of the very behaviors they exhibit. This dynamic ties into a larger discussion about the evolution of political language and ideology. Maher, who identifies as an old-school liberal, lamented the transformation of terms like woke. Originally a call to stay alert to injustice, the word has morphed into a catch-all for what he sees as the left's successes. He argued that while the term once carried positive connotations, it now represents a rigid orthodoxy that dominates liberal circles. Scarborough's reluctance to engage on this point suggested an awareness of its truth. After all, the woke left has become a powerful force within the Democratic Party, shaping its priorities and alienating moderates. Maher's critique extended to figures like Kamala Harris, whom he argued struggles to distance herself from the woke left. He suggested that undecided voters view her as potentially complicit in the left's more extreme policies, a perception that could hinder her appeal. This observation cuts to the heart of a broader challenge for Democrats: how to reconcile their progressive base with the broader electorate's desire for common-sense governance. Maher pointed out that many Trump supporters, even those who aren't fully enamored with him, see him as a counterweight to the left's perceived overreach. Policies like gender transitions in prisons or men competing in women's sports, issues Trump has vocally opposed, resonate with voters who feel the left has lost touch with practical realities. The conversation also touched on the complexities of addressing systemic issues like racism. Maher acknowledged the reality of historical advantages for white Americans, admitting that he likely benefited from systemic racism. However, he was quick to add that personal responsibility shouldn't be conflated with collective guilt. This nuanced position, recognizing both the existence of systemic issues and the limits of individual accountability, stands in contrast to the left's often uncompromising stance. Maher argued for policies that address real problems without succumbing to performative gestures or divisive rhetoric, a call for balance that feels increasingly rare in today's polarized climate. Scarborough's response to these points was notably subdued, perhaps because Maher's arguments struck a nerve. The liberal media's reluctance to acknowledge progress, whether on race relations or other social issues, has become a sticking point for critics like Maher. He noted that figures like Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, and Don Lemon thrive by perpetuating narratives of perpetual victimhood, a strategy that benefits their platforms but hinders honest discussions about progress. By refusing to celebrate advancements, the left risks alienating those who see tangible improvements in areas like civil rights and economic opportunity. On the other side, the text highlights Trump's appeal to conservative voters, emphasizing his alignment with their values. From opposing transgender participation in women's sports to advocating for stricter border security, Trump's positions resonate with those who feel neglected by the current administration. The text praises his focus on transparency, fiscal responsibility, and national security, framing his leadership as a corrective to years of mismanagement. It also celebrates the Republican Party's recent electoral success under Trump, describing it as a landslide that signals a rejection of the left's agenda. This narrative, however, isn't without its own biases. Just as Scarborough was accused of selective storytelling, the pro-Trump perspective glosses over controversies and complexities. Trump's rhetoric, while energizing his base, has undeniably alarmed critics who see it as undermining democratic norms. The text dismisses these concerns as Trump derangement syndrome, but that label risks oversimplifying legitimate worries about authoritarian tendencies. Similarly, the portrayal of the left as uniformly woke ignores the diversity of thought within the Democratic Party, where moderates and progressives often clash. The exchange between Maher and Scarborough, then, is less about who won the argument and more about what it reveals. Both sides are entrenched, wielding their own versions of truth to rally their audiences. Maher's independence gives him a unique vantage point. He can critique the left's successes without fully endorsing the right's agenda. Yet even he struggles to bridge the gap between these warring factions. His call for rational, results-driven governance feels like a plea for a bygone era, one where compromise and pragmatism were valued over ideological purity. The broader implications of this debate are sobering. The media, whether liberal or conservative, plays a central role in shaping perceptions, often at the expense of nuance. Outlets like MSNBC and their conservative counterparts thrive on outrage, amplifying divisions to keep viewers engaged. This cycle benefits pundits and politicians but leaves the public caught in a crossfire of competing narratives. For every Scarborough decrying Trump's rhetoric, there's a counterpoint celebrating his defiance of the establishment. For every Maher calling out the left's hypocrisy, there's a progressive doubling down on moral certainty. What's lost in this noise is the possibility of meaningful dialogue. The issues raised, misinformation, wokeness, systemic racism, border security, are complex and multifaceted. They demand careful consideration, not sound bites or gotcha moments. Yet the current media landscape, exemplified by clashes like Maher and Scarborough's, prioritizes spectacle over substance. The result is a public that's more divided, more distrustful, and less equipped to grapple with the challenges ahead. Ultimately, the question isn't whether the Republican Party is unsalvageable or whether the left has gone too far. It's whether we can find a way to move beyond these binaries, to engage with ideas rather than demonize opponents. Maher's independence, flawed as it may be, offers a glimpse of what that might look like, a willingness to question both sides, to seek truth even when it's inconvenient. But as long as figures like Scarborough cling to their narratives, and as long as Trump's supporters see him as the sole antidote to a broken system, that vision remains elusive. The reckoning, as the text calls it, may have begun, but its outcome is far from certain.